Martha, 58, never expected a jar of honey to land on her porch, let alone from next door's sworn enemy. Seattle drizzle blurred label, but golden swirls inside glowed like liquid sunshine. Last time she'd spoken to Hank, he'd yelled about her roses stealing his bees. Now this? Front porch gossip claimed his hives were failing. Martha smirked. That man couldn't sweet-talk a flower. Yet here sat proof, sticky, defiant, lit with possibility. She unscrewed lid. One taste, Martha never expected a jar of honey to crack open years of silence between her and Mr. Tanaka next door. That first amber jar, left on her porch with a post-it reading "Try this," sat untouched for days. Seattle's drizzle fogged its label, just like her stubbornness. Fear clung like old wax. What if reaching out lit another argument over property lines or his dog's barking? Her hands, knuckles beginning to map decades, hovered over lid. But curiosity, sticky as spilled syrup, won. One hesitant twist, and golden sweetness bloomed on her tongue. Memories surfaced, childhood summers spent stealing honeycomb from her grandfather's hives, his laughter as bees buzzed around them like tiny, winged referees. Now, standing in her own overgrown garden, she eyed Mr. Tanaka's pristine apiary boxes. Maybe fences weren't meant to divide, but to hold something worth sharing. She took a clumsy step forward, literally. Rain-slicked porch steps betrayed her, sending her sprawling into a patch of lavender. Mr. Tanaka rushed over, concern etching his face. Without a word, he helped her up, then gestured toward his hives. That weekend, they suited up in mismatched gear, her oversized veil slipping sideways as she laughed herself. Bees hummed approval. By fall, their shared harvest-filled jars lined up on both porches, labels now reading M+T's best. Neighbors paused during evening walks to ask about sudden truce. Front porch chats replaced cold shoulders, stories flowing easier than honey from a warm spoon. Martha realized fear had been a queen bee in her heart, stinging any chance of connection. But sweetness, it turned out, could gentle even sharpest divides. Now, every jar they gifted carried a silent lesson. Sometimes, bridges weren't built, they were stirred, one golden spoonful a time. Creator never expected a jar of honey to change her life, let alone mend fences with Sharon next door. Their feud had simmered for years, overgrown hedges, misplaced trash bins. That one time Sharon's terrier dug up Martha's prized peonies. But when woman found herself holding a golden jar from Sharon's cousin, a beekeeper upstate, something shifted. Honey was thick, floral, almost alive. It tasted like forgiveness. 58, she wasn't one for half-baked ideas, but curiosity got best of her. She signed up for a beginner beekeeping workshop community center, where she met Javier, a retired teacher with forearms like leather and a laugh that could shake honey from a comb. His crew, a ragtag group of urban farmers, a tech bro seeking zen, and a grandma who called her hive "my girls," welcomed her with open arms. She fumbled first, her hands clumsy in gloves, her heart racing when bees buzzed too close. But Javier's patience was unshakable. Bees don't care about grudges, he said. Just show up steady. Back home, Creator set up a hive in her backyard. Sharon eyed it from her porch, arms crossed. But when she offered her a spoonful of first harvest, light, citrusy, a miracle in a mason jar, Sharon's frown cracked. Soon they were comparing notes over iced tea, Sharon confessing she'd always wanted to try beekeeping, but didn't know where to start. By summer's end, their hives stood side by side, their honey blended into one harvest. Jars, labeled Sunset and Vine after their intersecting streets, became a hit local farmers market. Honey wasn't just sweetness, it was proof that even stickiest conflicts could melt with time and care. Martha laughed now, remembering how she'd once panicked when a bee got trapped in her sun hat. These days, she moved with a calm that surprised her, her hands steady as she checked frames. Life, like beekeeping, was a dance of patience and showing up. And sometimes, if you were lucky, It handed you a second chance, sticky, golden, and lit with possibility. Woman never expected a jar of honey to spark a truce, but there it sat, golden, sticky, absurd, on her Seattle porch between two warring households. Decades of petty grievances over fence lines and barking dogs had calcified into silence. Now bees hummed where insults once flew. 58. She'd scoffed idea of beekeeping as peacemaking. Too whimsical. Too Portlandia. Yet something about their collective buzz, industrious, indifferent to human drama, lit a stubborn fire under her. She ordered a starter hive, ignoring how her knees protested, crouching to inspect it. Neighbors peered through curtains, but she refused to flinch. Let them whisper. First misstep, assuming urban bees would respect boundaries. A swarm colonized next door's eaves, and woman arrived with a smoker and ladder, muttering about uninvited guests. Her hands shook not from fear of heights, but of frosty reception. To her shock, neighbor handed her a cup of tea afterward. No apology, just a nod. Progress, she decided, tasted like Earl Grey and humiliation. Harvest day arrived. Sticky-fingered and triumphant, she lined up jars like peace treaties. Left one on each porch with a note, "Try not to hate source." Weeks later, she spotted both households swapping honey over fence posts. Not quite friendship, but a ceasefire sweetened by calm and curiosity. Martha grinned, wiping her hands on her apron. Who knew diplomacy required a bee suit and sheer cussedness? Honey jar, once just glass and syrup, had become proof. Sometimes bridging divides meant creating a new hive altogether. Woman never expected a jar of honey to change her life, let alone mend a neighborhood feud simmering for years. But there it sat, golden and gleaming on her kitchen counter, proof that sweetness could soften even hardest hearts. Next door, Evelyn had barely spoken to her since that argument over fence lines, until Creator left a jar on her porch with a note. "Try this." No strings. Evelyn scoffed. Who did this woman think she was, bribing her with bees? But curiosity won. One spoonful later, Evelyn stood on Martha's doorstep, jar in hand, demanding to know how something so simple tasted like sunshine. Creator grinned. Bees don't care about property lines. Word spread faster than clover in spring. Soon, Half-Block was huddled on Martha's porch, buzzing about starting a community hive. Even Jim, retired cop who'd called idea lit nonsense, showed up, arms crossed, scowling until Creator handed him a frame heavy with honeycomb. His eyebrows shot up. "Damn, you made this?" Then came Twist, a local reporter, snapping pics of their ragtag beekeeping club for a feel-good feature. Overnight, Martha's porch became a pilgrimage site. Neighbors who'd avoided eye contact for decades now leaned over fences, swapping stories and hive tips. Evelyn, once Martha's sharpest critic, organized their first honey harvest party, laughing as sticky fingers fumbled with jars. Workshop she led, her first ever, she fumbled smoker, sending a comical puff into her own face. Crowd roared. But when she held up that first shared harvest, room fell silent. Honey glowed like liquid gold under lights, a symbol of what happened when people stopped fighting and started listening. Later, watching everyone toast with honey-drizzled biscuits, Martha felt it deep in her bones. I finally belong here. Even Jim clinked her jar, muttering, "Guess bees know a thing or two." Turns out, all it took was one gutsy move, a few thousand winged diplomats, and a whole lot of sticky sweetness to remind a neighborhood how good it felt to come home. Martha, 58, never expected a jar of honey to rewrite her story. But life's sweetest surprises buzz in unexpected ways. That first golden harvest, sticky fingers and all, became a bridge between her and Mr. Nguyen next door, a man she'd only ever scowled over overgrown hedges. Turns out, bees don't care about property lines or petty grudges. They danced between their yards, weaving connection where silence had festered. Soon, split-rail fences couldn't contain buzz. Neighbors peeked over with curiosity, then clattered up her porch steps, lured by promise of lavender-infused honey. Martha, apron dusted with pollen, became an unlikely ambassador, guiding hesitant hands through hive inspections. Even Linda from 3 doors down, who once called zoning over Martha's unsightly compost bin, now proudly displayed a honey jar on her mantel. By summer's end, their block hosted its first harvest party. Kids drizzled honey on biscuits, while adults traded stories under string lights. Mr. Nguyen brought his legendary plum wine, clinking glasses with Martha as fireflies winked approval. That shared honey harvest, once a simple gesture, grew into something lit, a symbol of how small, stubborn sweetness could melt decades of frost. Martha's odd habit of talking to bees? Turns out they weren't only ones listening. Your turn. Pick one sour moment, sweeten it with action today.